IVM.
Some time ago, 5 successful restaurateurs came together to form the Colaba Cartel. The founders of the table, Gauri Dayal and J. Yusuf, partnered with the founders of Woodside Inn, Abhishek Honawar, Pankil Shah, and Sumit Gambhir to open a new restaurant in Colaba. If you've ever dreamed of opening a restaurant or love eating out, you want to listen in. The Colaba Cartel. This exclusive 10-part series is hosted by Gauri Dayal and Amit Doshi.
Welcome to the 9th episode of the Colaba Cartel. We're going to talk about investments today. I can't tell you the number of times when I'm at a bar with friends and we're more than a few drinks down. And someone says, you know what, man? I want to open a restaurant. I want to open a bar in Goa. It's going to be awesome. I'll get to host a whole bunch of new friends every night.
Trust me, you do not want to be doing this. The restaurant business is a risky business. And today we're actually going to be talking a little bit more about the investment side of things with my cartel members, Pankil and Abhishek.
Awesome. Let's get on with it. This is going to be a really fun conversation. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey. So first question, before we get into anything, I got to ask you guys, have you raised outside funding for any of your ventures till now?
So when it comes to funding a restaurant, I think it's important to realize, where the money is coming from. It can come from outside. It can come from your inner circle, which is your close family and friends. It could come from the bank in the form of a loan. But the bottom line is there is money. Mm-hmm. So if you're planning to open a restaurant, it is possible.
Okay. So what about you, Gauri? Have you raised money from anybody externally?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So you have raised money externally. And you guys have also raised money externally?
Yes.
Okay. So then you have clearly dealt with all of the nonsense that goes around trying to raise money and done the 600 meetings and stuff like that, which are needed for
6,000.
6,000. Okay. Sorry. I understated that. So when you're looking for a investor, do you have an idea of what the ideal investor for a restaurant should be? Abhishek, you want to address that?
Well, an ideal investor, if you kind of put it into 3 high points, somebody who's extremely excited about the subject, who has a great, who understands and cares about what you're doing, and who has deep pockets.
Okay.
These are the three high points for an ideal investor. That said, you can never generalize these people.
Right.
Every requirement has a different set of people. Every requirement has a different timing. So, anybody could be the right person. I think it's up to you to go out there, meet people, analyze what you feel, and come back to who's going to participate with you.
Right. What about you, Gauri? I mean, do you have somebody you think of as this is the person who I want to get for?
So I think I'll take a step back, and rather than just talking about what I would look for any one of my projects, I think it's important to understand what you look for from an investor, because one thing is obviously the money aspect. That's
right.
A given. But it's also sort of investors can also bring experience and expertise to the business. So, it depends on what your business is. If you're looking to sort of scale your business, for example, and you want to leverage off a network or, the connections or the expertise of an investor, you might look at, private equity funding. Or you're looking at sort of eventually maybe listing your business, for example. You might look at private equity funding. If you're looking at a sort of a unique, standalone, one-off project, you could probably be looking at high net worth individuals. So if you're asking me what I'd look for in an H&I category, it's someone who believes in me, more importantly, and who trusts us to run the business the way we know, rather than someone who's looking to buy their way into becoming a restaurateur themselves overnight.
Right. That makes sense. So do you think that investors, whether they be, so I guess primarily from the H&I category, right? I mean, those investors, do you think they understand how the restaurant business is constantly evolving, or are they generally coming into the business with expectations which are not necessarily going to be able to be met?
I think that they should be looking at this as an investment that they will get a return on, but also are doing because they somehow feel passionate about that project.
Right.
They want to be part of something really exciting that they think is going to make a mark.
Right.
In our case, in the city or in a particular food space, they love food and they just want to be part of this. And of course, no one's doing charity here. So
Right.
they do want to get a certain return and have to be convinced about the business plan. But at the end of the day, they just want to be part of something unique and great.
So it just something more about investors understanding the business.
Right.
There might be cases where they don't completely understand the business entirely, but like with most businesses, investors are going to invest in you. They're going to invest in the people who are running the show. If you give them the confidence that what you believe is true and what you believe is going to happen, and they have that faith in you, and you give them that confidence, it's possible that they might be like, yeah, that works for me.
Right. So it depends on basically the rapport that you're able to establish with the individual person at that point, I guess. So let me follow that up with, is it tough to say no to people if they come to you with money? Like somebody comes to you with a bag full of cash and says that, hey, I want to be a partner in your restaurant. Here, take a ridiculous amount of money.
The quality of investment is the most important thing to me, to us, I think, because as I said, there are lots of avenues where you can have access to funds, but the quality, the value of that, it goes beyond just the monetary value, right? You are getting into a marriage with this person, be it a financial marriage, it's still, there still could be hard times. So you want to make sure that person is in there for the right reasons, and it's not just about the money.
Right. Are there any serious red flags that you have? Again, you guys have been doing this for a while. You've been running successful restaurants. I'm sure people have come to you and said, hey, I want to start working with you guys or something. Are there red flags that you can identify in some way that, hey, if somebody comes to me like this, I got to stay away?
Well, I think as experience, that you gain experience in this business. And I think the point I'm trying to make is as time passes by, you realize, the do's and the don'ts. And in the don'ts, you would categorize people who, speaking without any real basis points. Yes, the business is glamorous. Yes, the business involves meeting a lot of people. It's exciting. But it's also a business that's not cut out for everybody. Not everyone's cut out to be available around the clock to work, these kind of hours. And also be passionate about it.
Right.
So I guess, you soon realize who can be that person, who can be a support, who wants to assist your passion, but at the same time, not get involved on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
So you soon realize this, and you you don't really say hard no's to anybody, but you obviously kind of, shy away from taking any kind of conversations forward.
Fair enough. Gauri, what about you? Do you have anything which, if somebody comes to you and you're like, no, I don't want to work with this kind of person?
You might think that, you may not say that out loud, but I think that you can now probably tell who's coming in for what reasons. And a lot of people are doing it because they want to say they own a restaurant and, sort of storm in there and bring friends and family and entertain and, and that's not good for business. So
that seems to be something that all three of you really kind of are looking to avoid, right? People who are looking for this shortcut into becoming a restaurateur. Why is that? Can you give me some idea as to why? Because it seems to be such a clear-cut idea that we want to stay away from people like this, right? What's led you to that, right? Why do you feel that particular way about this kind of thing?
I think if people are in it only for the glamour,
right,
then they're in it for the wrong reasons,
right.
If people are in it for the passion, they truly believe in an idea, they truly believe in the people behind that idea, and they understand that we as operators or the restaurant operators are the experts in running the restaurant,
right.
and they have that sense of space, that sense of division of responsibility, that sense of division of thought process, then it's great.
Right.
But if you're in it only for the glamour where you're like, okay, this is my restaurant, I've put my money, now I can do whatever the hell I want.
Right.
That attitude is not conducive to a good business.
Right. Yeah, I buy that.
Sorry. I think the reason we're sort of quite clear on this as far as we're concerned about whom we would want to, engage with is because we've seen it go wrong around us so many times. So thankfully, it hasn't happened to us yet, but it's something that you learn from other people's mistakes.
I feel like there are a lot of untold stories around this particular aspect of thing which are not coming out right now, but that's okay. We won't get into that. Okay, so let's take a quick break right now and let's come back then and let's talk a little bit more about the mechanics of how you go about raising money for a restaurant.
Have you gotten yourself a gym membership and shown up only a few times? Are long working hours cutting your fitness goals short? How about you change things a little? Even a small effort can make a big difference. And I'll tell you how and what exactly. Hi guys, I'm Coach Urmi, and on the Kinetic Living podcast, you can look forward to some interesting stories of people who have changed the way they look at fitness after their kinetic journeys. Episodes out every Wednesday on the IVM app, website, and anywhere you get your podcast from.
So welcome back, everybody. So we spoke a little bit about the different kinds of investors that you like to work with, and we'll come back to that a little bit more and kind of like, talk about what are the different kinds of people that you look at as investing. But what I wanted to first, before we get into that, was talk to you a little bit about when you go out to raise money, how does it work? Like, so example, so there is a lot of press coverage around how app founders or tech founders go around and raise money, right? But when it comes to the restaurant business, it's more of a kind of like, it's something that happens more behind the scenes, right? So I thought that our listeners would be kind of interested in understanding what do you do for it, right? I mean, like you mentioned that you need a solid business plan, right? So I mean, like I guess that's the first step. How do you go about making sure that you get everything recorded into that and create the models that you need to kind of go out to an investor?
So setting up the business plan is definitely the most important thing, because at the end of the day, when you're going out to raise money, you have to prove that your business is viable. Once you do that, and you have numbers, you have friends, you have peers in the industry. In our case, we have actual existing restaurants with data points available, which we used for Misty when we were building the business plan. And thankfully, we had that around us. For new restaurants, it's a little more difficult. You have to, maybe speak to other restaurants and get a sense of their numbers. Next, you approach the people that you feel will be most valuable to you as your will be assets to you as partners and investors. You pitch it to them, you create the mood deck, you sell them the feeling, you sell them the idea, and then there are various methods of bringing them into the company, and you have the whole section of legal and finance related mechanics that go into that as well.
Which I'm guessing Gauri is quite on the ball.
Yes, she
right?
is very much so. We saved a lot of money on CA fees.
I will do my vasool later.
Drinks for life.
Yeah.
So when you go out to different investors, are these people who you have identified over the years that you think these would be the right kind of people to work with, or are there institutional investors as well who may not be like it might not be like personal relationships, but there are they may have invested in this kind of space earlier. Do you talk to both kinds, or do you kind of first reach out to your existing networks?
I think we wanted to reach out to our existing networks also because this may not seem as attractive to an institutional investor who sort of often looks at scalability of a project. A restaurant like Misty isn't something that you go in planning to multiply 10 times over in, different cities. So we were very sort of clear on that, and therefore approached people that we knew who we felt would be, fit that profile of, being passionate, but at the same time allowing us to do what we, know how to do.
Okay.
There are two kinds of investors, obviously. There are investors who give you seed money, who kind of assist your passion, who assist your seed thought, and the quantum of that money could be little, could be large. It depends on the ability of that investor. And institutional investors, the second type are the institutional investors. They are focused on a rate of return, and they are in it because they obviously have some ability in assisting you in growing. But at the same time, they're focused on making sure that they return that money at that particular rate.
Right.
Now, currently, we are in a place where we're in the former, for this specific restaurant, we're in the former league. And I think what I want to share here is, knowingly or unknowingly, you're constantly sending out signals, to people. And your ability to do the job, your job, in the same way, with the same amount of passion, with the same amount of stimuli, with the same amount of commitment, day in, day out, creates a sense of, people realize how important this is in a business, and they start believing in you. They start seeing that this is the right thing to do, and this is the right person to invest in. So on a daily basis, you're sending out signals. And I think, finding that discipline, is important. And automatically you realize people start coming to you and talking to you. Hey, in the event you raise money for something in the future, please think of me as someone I would like to be a part of your story.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to hear, that someone is interested in being a part of your story and not trying to create his or her own through you.
Right. So that strikes me as kind of a slightly, I don't know if contradictory is the right word, but I mean, like, they do feel like competing tensions, right? Where you want somebody who is only involved to a certain degree, but at the same time, they are getting into it from a passion perspective, right?
Well, you have to understand that if something does go wrong,
right,
you're the captain of the ship,
right,
you're going to jump last. That person's not going to jump last,
right,
so you're going to go down with the ship if the ship's going down. So yes, their money is involved with that, but you're there to take that decision.
It's your life, yeah.
So involvement is, motivation. There are many ways of being involved. There's you kind of give motivation, you give guidance, you bring experience, and those are better, tools of involvement for an investor, as opposed to being there, in the business trying to tell you how to operate.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, like, I buy the separation part of it. I just felt that if it's somebody who is a passion investor, right, somebody who has not really invested in a lot of different things but sees this as something they want to invest in, I'm sorry, I seem to be obsessed with this particular idea, right, of people who want to get into the restaurant business and how do you separate them out, right? How do you have that conversation with somebody? Because, I mean, like, it could be that they come in and it seems like the initial stages, everything was like, the way you wanted to. But then as time goes on, they start wanting to get more and more involved. How do you have that conversation with them that, hey, dude, your role is your role?
I think one thing that's really important, whether you're talking about their roles or whether you're talking about, the numbers or anything, is that from the word go, you have a very honest relationship with this potential or maybe actual investor. So, there's very clear transparency in every aspect. And I think defining that, what you want from them or don't want from them is as important, a part of the communication. Right. And I know for me, I've sort of made that quite clear where I think that there may be doubt. I mean, you may have investors who that's not even really, within they're passionate in the sense that, as opposed to investing in a million other potential sort of service industries or products, they would prefer to do it in the F&B space, right, because they maybe love food and, or just sort of love what we do. But they're not intending to be involved. They have their day jobs in a way. But the most important thing that you can do as an entrepreneur trying to raise is just be very frank and open from the beginning so that there's no sort of gray areas there.
Do you think it helps to look at investors who are not first-time investors to kind of mitigate these issues? Or, if it's a first-time investor, it feels like they would probably not know the boundaries that you're trying to set.
No, see, it depends from person to person, investor to investor, because you could have investors who are very clear about the boundary walls because they're like, this is not my expertise. I'm investing, as I said, you're investing in a person. So that investor will say, I'm investing in you. I trust you to do what you're doing. Do that. Yes, there could be chances where when things are not going well, they jump in and say, we should change this, we should do this. But those things are discussions that need to have happened before you get into, this situation with them.
Cool. So you don't think it matters whether they're first-time investors or not?
No,
I think basically
so.
it just matters.
It's the personality of the person is more important than whether they're first-time investors or not.
And do you think it's easier for you to raise money as a entrepreneur rather than a first-time entrepreneur versus an entrepreneur who's already successful? When you're going out to raise money, do you think that eases things a little bit more?
Of course, yeah.
Your value certainly increases when you've had success behind you, because then you are in a commanding position.
Right.
When you have not proved yourself yet, you're a first-time entrepreneur. I'm not saying it's more difficult to raise money. I just think your value is not going to be as high as it would have been when you have experience behind you.
But I think it's also easier to convince an investor who can see a success story, and not that it's necessarily a guarantee for any future project, but there's a little more comfort in knowing that you've been able to prove that you can do a certain thing. So of course it's easier for a second or third time restaurateur to sort of raise, as opposed to being completely fresh off.
So I mean, like, from an experience perspective, just one, you're already successful, but also, like, understanding the process of going around it, that is also, I'm assuming, helpful in the second round or the second time around.
Oh yeah, to be honest, the process is as complex as getting the investor in.
Yeah.
And having experience definitely makes it easier.
Yeah. I mean, that's been my experience, right? This is the second company that I've raised money for. And the first time it was, not that this time has been much easier, but the first time around it was a nightmare of epic proportions. I mean, like, that was all I was doing for 6 months.
Yeah.
Whereas this time it was kind of like, okay, I knew what I needed to do. I knew the follow-up routines and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff helped me. Did you feel similarly?
Oh, 100%. I mean, in our case, because we had raised money when we got into this project, we were, at least, we were in a position to understand what to do, what not to do. Gauri, of course, comes from a financial background, strong financial background, and she knows exactly how to, work it such that it works for all the parties involved. So, yeah, experience shows.
Awesome. So one question when you're looking at investment in the tech business generally, and again, I'm coming back to that because that's what most people are familiar with, is generally not debt. It's almost always equity-based investments. Over here in the restaurant business, from what I understand, debt plays a component as well in terms of how you guys work, because cash flows are predictable to a degree and that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that raising money through debt makes sense as well, especially for a new restaurateur? If he has the ability to raise debt, should he, or is that... I
think it's a financial calculation. Yeah. I think you have to understand what is going to be more expensive for you based on your business model. Right. If your interest payments and on your debt repayment is ending up being more expensive than giving up equity and you earning that much less, then it's a very obvious choice. So I think it's more a mathematical calculation of the cost of debt versus the cost of equity.
Right. All right, cool, great. Any last thoughts on how we should... Yes,
just to add to this, usually you would not, the opportunity, as a first-time entrepreneur, it's very hard to get debt.
It is, I know.
And I think as it's not easy to raise debt in India for a first-time entrepreneur. It's few and far in between stories.
Right.
That said...
There are a few debt-to-equity conversion instruments available to first-time entrepreneurs.
True, as first-time entrepreneurs, your attention is on delivering the project, not on raising money. The raising money there should be tools to kind of have investment brought forward to young people.
That's an ideal world, man.
Sure. That said, equity is usually the route that you pick. Yeah. But you have to show uniqueness in your idea. You have to show what the potential of your idea, and that's where you showcase the value before you deliver the project. Right. And if you can convince people of that value, I think that's where you can keep your attention on and drive that further.
Right. Makes sense. Cool. So guys, let's kind of get into last thoughts around what your philosophy is around raising money, around working with investors and things like that. So Pankil, why don't you start this time?
Very simple philosophy. I think money should work for you more than just at its own cost. Right. So the same goes for the investor. The investor, money is available, but I think it needs to do more than just work for you as its face value.
Yeah. Gauri, what about you? What are your thoughts around this kind of just generally?
I just think it's so important to get into bed with the right people, and I mean that metaphorically, obviously. But it's just
literally
because,
also.
There's that. Yeah. But no, I think it's not about just getting that check the first time. It's a very much an ongoing relationship, and so it's something that you want to be able to focus on your business, not on managing your investors. Right. And that's why it's so important to have the right people to partner with.
Yeah. Abhishek, final thoughts?
Just adding to what Pankil and Gauri said, I think trust, honesty, and transparency is key. You have to be able to communicate everything that you're feeling, and you should be able to, show everything that's going on in the business truly to everybody participating.
All right, great, guys. I think this was an interesting conversation. I think this will be really valuable to everybody, especially people looking to raise money in this space. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really fun. But, Gauri, the investors come on before you actually open the restaurant, right? It's all on paper at that point in time. but does anything change once the restaurant actually opens?
You know, Amit, everything we've talked about so far has been about the restaurant before it opened. But if you actually want to know how it finally panned out, tune in to the final episode.
And send us some questions on our social media handles. And I mean, like, there's Misty Colaba on either Twitter or Instagram. There's G. David Dayal on Instagram. Or IVM Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we'll try and answer some of those questions in the last episode. And in the meantime, guys, please also make sure that you're following us on social media. If you want to follow the Misty Restaurant, that's Misty Colaba on Instagram or Twitter. Gauri is at G. Devi Dayal on Instagram. And also please make sure you're following IVM Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
अगर आपकी जिंदगी में कोई ऐसी आपको दुविधा हो जिसका सवाल कोई दे नहीं पा रहा, तो हमने बनाया है आपके लिए एक खास शो जिसका नाम है सुन लो जी सुरलॉजी, जिस पर मैं पवन कुमार आपका सूत्रधार आपका स्वागत करता हूँ ताकि आप पूछ सके सवाल सोनू से.
Yes, I am Sonu. Hello, pleased to make your meeting. I am a super reality celebrity और दुनिया के कोई भी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है जो सेलिब्रिटी सॉल्व नहीं कर सकते, तो मैं आपके सारे प्रॉब्लम्स का हलाइजेशन एंड सॉल्वाइजेशन कर दूंगा.
तो जी हाँ, सोचिए मत, जरूर सुनिए सुन लो जी सोलॉजी हर बुधवार, दैट इज वेडनेसडे.
प्लीज लाइक आइज, शेयर आइज, कमेंटलाइज. अगर आपके पास कोई भी प्रॉब्लम्स है, सोनू को बताइए. सोनू सारे प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर सकता है. इसी तरह तो मैं सुपर सेलिब्रिटी बना हूँ.